So for notes 12.3, we're going to look at measures of central tendency, and we're also going to look at what's called dispersion. So our essential question is, how do I find the mean, median, mode, and range? Okay, these are actually probably data values that you have found in the past, and I've taken the definitions right out of the book here. When you think of mean, I like to think of the average. Okay, think of your grade. Okay, your grade is made up of an average of assignments. When we think of median, I like to think of the middle value. Okay, so when we think of middle value, we're also going to want to make sure that those numbers are in order. And when we think of mode, I like to think of the word most, the number that appears the most. Okay, so those three, mean, median, and mode, those are measures of central tendency. Okay, measures of central tendency. Measures of dispersion. It describes how dispersed or spread out the values in a data set are. So we're kind of looking at how wide, I would think, all the values are. Okay. When we think of the word range, okay, the definition of range is the difference, that means subtract, in the biggest number and the smallest number. So if we wanted to talk about the range on like a test or a quiz, we would take the highest grade and the lowest grade and we would subtract and we would see how far off all of those were. And the last word that's probably a good one for us to have a good understanding of is called an outlier. And it's a data value that is either much greater or much less than the data values in the set. So it is a value, so it's a number. It could be two numbers. Usually you don't see that very often. And you don't have to have an outlier. But an outlier is a number that is much bigger or smaller than the other values in the set. So I always like to give the example of if we were to collect data on all of our ages. Okay, so if I were to collect data on all the students' ages, okay, all of those ages are going to be very close. They would be within probably a year, 2 years. If we were talking at everyone in middle school, possibly 3 years apart. And then compare that to myself, the teacher. I would be the outlier. My age would be a lot greater than the students' ages. So that's an example of an outlier. Again, you don't have to have an outlier. Right into looking at an example. Okay. These are some bowling scores. There are 8 different bowling scores here. The first thing that's going to be super helpful and what needs to be done is these bowling scores need to be put in order from the smallest bowling score to the largest bowling score. So what jumps out to me at first is 104, 104, and 104. I see 3 of those. After 104, I see 109. After 109, I see 113. And then I see 117. I see a 136. And my highest number I see is a 189. Okay, so it's very important for us to make sure that when we have data, any kind of information, numbers, that if we're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and the range, that we put those numbers in order. Okay. I also count, make sure 1, 2, 3, I have 8 numbers and I had 8 bowling scores up there. You want to make sure, maybe cross them off as you go is also another good tactic. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with the mean, the average. So the average here is add up all of those values. So when we begin to add up the 104s and the 117 and 136, we add all of those values up. And we're going to get 976. And we're going to divide that value by 8. And how I got 8 was because there were 8 numbers that we added. It's the number, however many numbers you are adding together, that's what you're dividing by to get the average. And so when we divide this, we are going to get an average of 122. So that is the mean. So we might have had that really high score of 189 and a couple low scores of 104, but our average is around the 122 mark. So now let's talk median. Median is the middle number. So when I look at median, I just kind of work my way to the middle. Okay. And I'm not crossing them off here. I have 2 numbers that are in the middle. So when you have 2 numbers that are in the middle, you actually have to find the middle of that, which I'm sure you could probably tell me what is in the middle of 109 and 113 is 111. But how we would find that if we did not know is we actually just find the average. So what is in the middle of those? You would add these together and divide. And our middle number here would be 111. So the middle number, the middle value is 111. The next thing we want to look at is the mode. The mode is usually the easiest to see. And what we're looking for is any number that is written more than one time. If you do not have any number written more than one time, then you just write no mode. Don't write 0 because 0 is a number. Write no mode. But here we do have a mode. We have 3 104s. So our mode here would be 104. And remember, those are what we call central tendencies. The last thing we want to find is a measure of dispersion. Let's find our range. We're going to take that biggest number, 189, and if we subtract our smaller number, 104, we are at 85. So our range here would be at 85. So on this lesson, or during this lesson, you're going to have to find the mean, the median, the mode, and the range. And I cannot stress enough, put these numbers in order at the beginning. Okay, you can't find the middle number if they're not in order. It also helps you identify the smallest and the biggest. It also helps you identify any of them that are the modes because they're right next to each other. Let's look at our very last problem. This last problem, it actually is talking about you have 3 exam grades of an 80%, 93, and a 91. It wants to know what grade on the next exam to get an average. It's telling us what the average is. It's telling us the mean. Remember, the mean is add all numbers up and divide by how many you have. So it's telling me it wants my answer to be 90. And it says on the 4th exam. So that means we're going to add up 4 exams. We know the first exam is 80. We know the second exam was 93. We know the third exam was 91. We don't know the 4th. That's what we're finding. Make that the letter X. So exam 1, 2, 3, and we don't know the 4th. We're going to divide by 4 here because we wanted the average of 4 exams to equal 90. So we just simply have an equation to solve. And so in order to solve this equation, I can simplify the top. So I would have, if I added the 3 numbers up, I would end up with a 264 plus x, still divided by 4 equals 90. Think of solving an equation. I should have drew my line down, my equal sign. To get rid of the 4 on both sides, or to get rid of the divide by 4, because this is a big fraction here, The inverse of divide by 4 is to multiply by 4. So whatever we do to one side, we want to do to the other, and these 4's cancel. So we're just left with our 264 plus x equals 360. And to solve and get x all by itself, we're going to subtract 264 from both sides, and our value for x is 96. So if we had an exam that was an 80, and an exam that was a 93, and an exam that was a 91, and let's say maybe we wanted our final grade in the class to be an exactly 90%, we'd have to get a 96 on that last exam. So we're actually finding what one of our missing values is by knowing what our average is. That's all I have for this, measures of central tendency and dispersion.